Number 11,
I'm going to get cooked, just so you know.
because this is you, which will come as no surprise. Number 11, Cade Cunningham. I did have Franz over Cade. That's okay. I think Cade's ceiling is higher. I'll say that. Like, let's start there. Purely in terms of ceiling, I think he has a higher ceiling than Franz Wagner. Cade averaged 22.7 points, 4.3 rebounds, 7.5 assists. Shot 45, 35, 87 from the field. That still was a true shooting percentage, 6% below league average, just because he takes a ton of mid-range shots. One of 7 players this year to average 22 points, 7 assists, and shoot 35% from 3. One of the smartest players on the ball that you'll find in the league. Just the creativity, the poise, the confidence, the comfort, the ability to operate at his own pace, right? Like, look, you watch every single game that Cade plays. I'm just going to give it to you and you can talk about it.
No, I'm saying I'm going to get cooked because I think people are going to be mad that he's this low. Like, Pistons fans are going to be pissed that he's this low. Listen, I wanted to give Cade some love because I have watched every single second of Cade Cunningham, and I don't think he has been put in a position to really show how talented he can be. And he has gotten better. He dealt through injuries. And here's another thing I've talked about a couple times. The opportunity is there for Cade because he was going to be the guy. He is the guy in the Detroit Pistons organization. They finally, I think, put real floor spacing around him this offseason, and we will get to see how he can operate and perform with that. I believe in the jumper, so I think he's going to make shots at a high enough level to complement the rest of his game. He's continued to put on strength. I think you mentioned it, the passing and the cerebral and all of that. And I am going to be a little bit bullish on the fact that I think he can still be a neutral level, if not a little bit better defender. He has not been that up to this point in his career. I get it. There's been a lot on his plate, but I think he has the ability to be a somewhat two-way player. And so because of that, I see all NBA level possibilities being the best player and face of the franchise for a Pistons team that hopefully at some point isn't winning 20 games a year anymore.
So I agree with you. He has all NBA upside. I think that's all 1000% right. Would not stun me in any way if he ends up as an all NBA player. 2 things that could come up there. Where are you on the handle? We'll start in terms of getting to the spot before we talk about like what happens at the spot, right? Where are you on the handle in terms of him being able to consistently not kind of like it's a little bit loose, like he kind of loses.
Sure.
Do you think that's a function of the court being too cramped because they've had no spacing? Or do you think that's a function of his handle just being a bit too loose or a combination?
Yeah, so I don't think Cade has the most creative. Like, he's not the most wiggle guy that you're going to watch. He did, especially early in his career, I feel like he struggled to handle bumps and he would just like lose the ball. Like, he would get to a spot and take a bump and lose it. But I think it's practical enough to get where he needs to go. And I think he's been so adamant about having to force the issue. He dribbles himself into tough spots because he has no other option other than to try to do so. Because quite honestly, there haven't always been a whole lot of other guys to make plays or to keep the floor space to allow him. I think that's ultimately going to make him better though, Sam, because he's had to be forced to work in these tight areas. And when things open up, even by a foot or 2 feet, it should make things a little bit easier. So,
okay. Question number 2. What do you think of the finishing? Because he is largely a below rim finisher. Has some moments where he can get up and go off of 1, most of the time off of 2, but can go off of 1 and finish above the rim because he's so long, has that 7-foot wingspan. Do you think the finishing is a product of the lack of spacing, or do you think it's a product of him being a poor finisher?
No, I do not think that's a lack of spacing thing. I think that's an area where Cade has to get better. If you tell me I'm too high and he doesn't hit this threshold, I think it's ultimately because he doesn't figure out the finesse finishing. Cade has to be, honestly, a Franz Wagner type of finisher in terms of the way he does it, right? He's
Yep.
not going in there and exploding vertically over guys. He has to extend and soft touch high off the backboard. He has to use nuance. He has to, you know where else Cade has to be better? He has to get to the free throw line. Like that's the other
Yes.
thing. So
Yes.
I think those two things combined, he has to finish better at the rim and he has to get to the free throw line more. That's what I guess I will buy into him improving. And if it doesn't, then that ceiling lowers and he's probably not a primary guy, probably not an all NBA guy. He ends up as being a secondary guy and an all-star level player. And that's still okay, but not maybe warrants where I have him ranked and maybe even where our averages end up having him ranked.
Yeah. Cade was another one that I struggled with quite a bit. I think in terms of ceiling, the ceiling is, as high as just about anybody on this list outside of the top 2 or 3, right? Like, I think if it
Yes.
really goes right for Cade, it's jumbo initiator. It's, 25 points and 9 rebounds a game or 9 assists a game with 7 rebounds. And he's dominating the game on, like, I can see that ceiling. There are real chances that he can do that. The floor is way lower. Like his ceiling is way higher to me than the next guy on the list. And I think a lot of people would have that reversed. But like the way that he thinks the game, the way that he is capable of kind of controlling the game, that's kind of something we haven't talked about. People look at him as like almost an only on ball player because of how ball dominant he can be from time to time, right?
Yes.
I think that his pace of play and the way that he's able to control the game for somebody as young as he is actually a benefit, not a hindrance in a lot of ways. Yes, if he ends up not being a number 1, then there are probably some issues there.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The scalability could be a question, I think. But I think he is a point guard, and I think his ability to dominate the ball and control the tempo of the game is not a bug. It's a actual positive thing.
And here's where my perspective is probably different than just about anybody else, because I've watched every second of Cade Cunningham play basketball in his NBA career. And I've seen what he's had to deal with. And there's other guys that have had the face of the franchise primary guy label on them from day one on this list, Sam. There are, right? Like, I'm not saying he's the only one that has had to do that, but that's been a lot for Cade to have to take on from day one with no other real secondary guy. Like Jaden Ivey didn't even sniff this list. We didn't even mention him last episode. And I think we're 2 of the higher people on Jaden Ivey.
Yeah.
But that's been
probably should have mentioned him, to be honest. But yeah.
I didn't want to be too much of a homer, so I just left it alone. But because of some of the stuff last year with Monty and all of that, Cade is going on 3 coaches in 4 years. Now it's a new front office, no floor spacing, no secondary guy, all of that stuff. I understand this is going to come off as making excuses. I get it. To me, it's just like what it is. It's the truth. This is the year. 12 months from now, if we haven't seen Cade really explode, he had a whole offseason to continue to grow his game, realistic floor spacing. Hopefully year 4, all of that. I think this could be a really big year for Cade. And if it's not, then this ends up being a little bit high. And that conversation of scalability in a different role does come into play, because to me, his ultimate value is on the ball and how he can, like you said, manage a game and operate a game from there.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm fascinated to see it this year because they do have space, at least. Like Tobias Harris is there.
Tim Hardaway Jr.
There,
yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not saying they're going to win a bunch of games. I'm just saying you can put guys and rotations and lineups on the floor you don't have to play Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson together. That's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have to do that stuff anymore. Fontecchio, Beasley, Hardaway Jr. has real gravity. Harris has real gravity. It opens some of these things up.
But Bryce, they might do that. They might play Asar and Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey together.
Go to the next one. Go to the next one. No, they're not. Go to the next one.
I'm gonna laugh hysterically if Jaden Ivey or if Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson are both starting.
No.